did see a lot of investment happening in the GenAI space in the last few months. Some of it was like people are raising money on PowerPoints, which is a sign that.
Are you kidding?
Yes.
People are raising money on PowerPoints.
Yes, OpenAI spent hundreds of millions of dollars to train their GPT models. Bloomberg spent some $50 million to train their Bloomberg, foundation model. But with ChatGPT, right, because it has become accessible by common man, now the awareness and the desire to use AI and interact with AI has just shot off the roof. What I would like to warn though is that this is just the starting of it. It's non-deterministic, right?
Yeah.
Its responses are not always reliable. The way these models are trained, they by nature they can hallucinate. They can produce stuff that is non-factual. They can produce anything.
Yeah,
right?
The do anything now prompt, which could break the ChatGPT. It was a jailbreak.
Yes.
It was scary.
Yeah. It is scary, and that's where enterprise platforms and platforms that allow you to develop applications need to fundamentally build those guardrails.
Hello and welcome to a super special episode of Pitch Cafe podcast. I tell you this because there's one word on every tech enthusiast's mind, and that is GenAI. Today, our guest, Peeyush Rai, is building his fourth startup, and it is in GenAI. Hey, he's had 3 successful stints before in security in AI, and he's really very comfortable and calm about taking on this animal, this dinosaur called GenAI. I tell you this because I have seen a lot of AI startups go south. I've seen what data-centric startups are capable of doing. They're unicorns and decacorns. So this is a very high-risk space and high-return space. And Peeyush Rai totally blew me away with his insights on the GenAI startup and venture landscape when I listened to him at one of his recent panels. And today I really want to talk to him heart out about what his startup Weave AI is about. And to all you people who are thinking of doing a startup in GenAI, don't miss this episode. We're going to get lots of amazing insights. So Peeyush, welcome to Pitch Cafe podcast. You're from IIT Bombay, the crest of the crown from India, and you're here on your 4th startup. So tell us, what are some of the risks of doing a startup in the GenAI space, and why do you pick this space? And you could be anywhere. You could be doing another AI startup or another data startup, but GenAI is like the riskiest place to be, and you seem to be very happy and doing very well. So tell us all about.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for having me here, Vida. Startups are all about risk anyway, and risk is what also creates the opportunity. If you're doing a startup which has no risk, then that problem has been probably solved, and then the opportunity sort of goes away. So when you say you're doing a startup, you have already taken the risk, and people who are comfortable doing startups are risk takers by nature, and they want to venture into areas where others have not gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I love doing startups, early stage product development, customer solution discovery, product discovery. That's been my passion. I've been with data and AI for the last 15 years. Generative AI is just a type of AI. It's a sort of a new shift in the AI fundamental technology landscape, which has enabled a lot more use cases and a lot more power to what some of the stuff we had been doing with traditional AI. So it's not that I chose to do generative AI as a theme. AI has been at the back of my background in startups before. Gen AI is a great tool for us to do a lot more things with AI. So that's how I landed up here.
Yeah. Fantastic. So to a lot of listeners here probably are dabbling with AI. So tell us the difference between doing like a normal AI startup and a Gen AI startup. I know that Gen AI has a lot more intelligence of its own, and it can be like a co-pilot, like a alter ego to any person. For example, the other day when I was doing a podcast, he said, I want to build co-pilots for program managers, co-pilots for CEO. So what is this thing called Gen? Why do they have Gen? We have AI. What is Gen AI?
Yeah, it's so generative AI uses a sort of a technique that is called transformer models that has been around for a while. It's not that those models are new by any sense. This research has been going on for the last 7-8 years, right? What has really changed is that some of the companies like OpenAI and now Google and a few others are training those transformer models with a large amount of general data. So Wikipedia and research papers and a lot more curated information around the internet. And so what that has led to is those models now are sort of encoded with all this information. Fundamentally, these models are not intelligent on their own. They are essentially models that know what is the next word or the next thing that is coming if I'm giving them a series of previous things. So, for example, they're great at completing a sentence, or they're great at generating the next pixel in an image, for example.
Right. Wow.
Fundamentally, that's what they are. But because they are trained with so much data, they have the neural network inside sort of programmed to predict the common sense things that we talk about. And so it appears that they know what conversation we are having. So the generative part is essentially predicting the next content, so to speak. It could be a text, it could be an image. And that's why these technologies around generative AI are conducive to building things like Copilot, because they provide a conversational interface to interact with the model.
So,
Right.
so let's say I'm a typical product manager, and my boss told me today, "Hey, look, this particular competitor company is building this feature. Can you do a research about this feature and what we can build as a counter?" So when I do that, I go to my desk, and let's say my company, say, hired a company like yours, and you build a co-pilot for us. What will your tool do to me?
Yeah. So fundamentally, the Copilot, if you think about it, has two parts to it. One is the interface that you see, the chat interface, which is
Right.
pretty much all software technologies will have that chat interface going forward. That's a table stake that has got now enabled, and that's one of the things that has got enabled because of Gen AI.
Right.
But the chat interface is just the surface. The real power comes from the data behind. So, for example, in this case, if you're just doing research on existing products in the competitive space, then yes, information from Google or other search engines can be curated and you can get a summary out of it. But if you are trying to build something which is innovative and you want to use your own data, then you need to take your the generative AI model, or which is usually called as the foundation model, and then fine tune it with the proprietary data that you may have. So, for example, you may be building some features in your product that others don't have.
Correct.
And that's not something a ChatGPT can imagine, because that's not available outside. So I think building a powerful co-pilot type of application or any solution would require two things. One is that is available today, which is the chat interface. But the second thing, which is more important, is how do you bring in your own data to sort of complement the language model that is there, to essentially get the power of the whole experience of a conversational intelligence with that. So it's those two parts that need to come together. Yeah.
Fantastic. So now that you explained what the gen really means and what a co-pilot can do to a regular workflow for let's say a product manager or program manager, the next level of thinking is, how much does it cost? Let's say I want to build a foundation model for an organization like let's say Databricks or Snowflake. It's a large organization, very large organization, thousands of employees, versus building it for a startup. Like I work for a startup, there are 5 people. So what is the cost ranging like?
Yeah, so it depends on what the ambition is. So, I mean, Databricks and Snowflake.
Employee co-pilot, let's
say. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, larger companies that have lots of data in their enterprise, and Databricks and Snowflake themselves are tech companies, so I'm sure they'll end up building something eventually. But it is all a function of how much data you need to train that model. So today the compute is still expensive because GPUs are expensive; they are low in supply.
What do you mean by saying compute? Compute means the transformer algorithm that runs on your local device or local.
No, so before you can use these models, you have to train these models with your own data, right?
Right.
If you use a ChatGPT or a GPT model which has been trained on generic data, you will get generic responses, right? And it's
Yes.
great for that,
Yes.
right? But let's say if I'm an enterprise X and I have my own enterprise data, and you would like to train the model with that proprietary data, then you need to train the model, and training requires compute. It requires GPUs because these are neural network, deep learning based models. You can also do them on CPUs, but they will take 10 times more time and money.
Yep.
So GPUs are fundamental infrastructure compute components that are necessary. Today it's expensive. It has already become much cheaper to train simpler models around using this technology. But still, if you're ambitious of building a foundation model, it can cost you a lot of money. As an example, OpenAI spent hundreds of millions of dollars to train their GPT models. Bloomberg spent some $50 million to train their Bloomberg, foundation model.
Yep.
And then, but if I'm taking an open source foundation model and then just training with my own data, which is maybe 20 to 30% additional data, it could be cheaper, but it's not as cheap as I can do this. Everybody could do this. So I think that's where enabling technologies will play a role to bring these smaller, more specific models to some companies. The larger companies can afford some of these things. The smaller companies will have to be served by other platforms, and Weav AI is one such platform which will enable a mid-sized company or even an enterprise to train their own foundation model.
That's a great market to be in, I feel, because startups are disrupting everything, and they're even today they're more than aware about privacy issues. Maybe they don't want to use Amazon web services. Maybe they don't want to use Azure. Maybe they want to host everything locally. I know a couple of my friends doing startups, they want to do it locally. So you're serving that market. How hard is it to break into that market?
Yeah, so I think locally may not be the right technical term here. People are still using cloud, but I can have my own private cloud on AWS or Google.
Right.
So it's more private cloud, right? OpenAI is a open service which have their own model. So that I would call it as a public. If you send your data to OpenAI, it is going into a third party. But if you have your own private cloud, then you are still in control of your data.
Right.
So yeah, we are able to serve both people who are on a private cloud, or if they want to host their own models locally, that's also possible. But that trend is going away more and more because you don't want to have a data center and compute in your premises these days, right?
Right.
People are
you
more
have to maintain it.
Yeah, people are more comfortable with cloud, but it's a private cloud. So yes, I think eventually in the next 5 years, many companies will have their own foundation models, and they will need the technology and infrastructure to be able to manage and keep it maintained and keep it fresh with the new data. It requires some of the fundamental building blocks of AI platforms and generative AI platforms, and yes, there are a few companies that will be making those things available. We are making that available in a plug and play type of fashion, so that you don't have to worry about building that from or using a complex environment. But there'll be many options, right? Google will provide their own sort of tool sets. Amazon will provide that. Azure will provide that, and there'll be other startups. Our goal is to make it extremely simple for enterprises to develop and maintain their foundation models and the applications that are built on top of that. But yeah, there'll be obviously few options. It's not easy to build that foundational infrastructure. It takes time and effort, and people who have experience with it can do it, I guess, better and faster. So that's what we are trying to provide.
Fantastic. 2 years ago at Stanford University at Human-Centric AI conference, I used to hear this word foundation models a lot from the PhD and postdoc students. And here you were building this foundation model already, and you're creating a business out of it. How hard was it to learn about foundation models? Didn't that overwhelm you, that this idea is still in the research labs and you're already at a point where you're building a startup out of foundation models?
Yeah.
So how did you make that call?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Actually, I just recently wrote a blog about democratization of AI And you're right. 2 years back, this whole technology was in research, and
Correct.
it's very difficult to take a research project and make it into a commercially viable thing. But what has happened in the last 2 years is companies like OpenAI, who have taken this technology from a research lab to making it available more widely, especially with applications like ChatGPT. I think that has really propelled a very fast path from the research to commercialization.
Yeah.
Right.
So I wanna talk about this whole Chat GPT thing. Chat GPT was just one of the side effects. This has been happening for a while, right?
Yes.
Chat GPT is something which made a common man
Yes.
come face to face with the foundation models that were driving this whole model which was trained on the internet. Apparently, Reddit data was used a lot, and they said you should pay Reddit. OpenAI should pay Reddit because Reddit is a very trusted source. A lot of people go there to learn. So, what did ChatGPT do? What do you think it did? Because of which everybody is now doing GenAI startup. The VC movement has gone from Web3 to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
What did it do?
Yeah, so we'll discuss the VC part, in a subsequent topic. But if you look at the cycle of technology adoption, right, it usually starts with research. Then some companies take that research and commercialize it,
Yeah.
and then it becomes so commonplace that it becomes democratized. Everybody has access to it.
Right.
And so I think with the foundation models, that's exactly what has happened. It has gone from research to commercialization to democratization extremely fast within a few months, right? And I think that has opened up the opportunity for lots of people to start using those type of technologies, right? Foundation models or transformer techniques had existed before, but they were still, like I said, being used in very specific applications, and maybe a lot of it was still in research. But with ChatGPT, right, because it has become accessible by common man, now the awareness and the desire to use AI and interact with AI has just shot off the roof. And that's the reason why VCs also think, investors think that it's a hot market, and not just investors. A lot of the entrepreneurs are now wanting to build using that, and there is a enterprise aspect which is obviously a little bit more difficult, but building consumer applications has become much easier using AI applications using ChatGPT for specific use cases, right? So I think that's the movement that is currently going on, and it's obviously very hot right now. What I would like to warn, though, is that this is just the starting of it.
It's a starting.
It's a starting point. It is not a proven successful model yet, because like any other AI technology, generative AI is also relatively new, and it's non-deterministic, right? Its responses are not always reliable, right? So one has to still go through the grind of making this technology useful and valuable for businesses and users.
Right.
It's easy to build a demo and show the power of it, which is what majority of the people are doing. But to take that and really build an enterprise class or a consumer class, service or a platform or an application, that's a whole different ballgame. And I think that's just starting. I don't think we are there yet.
I think that's where seasoned entrepreneurs or good entrepreneurs will differentiate themselves. So, I want to talk about how GenAI startups will be valued by VCs. What do you think what is the sheet they use to value the assets of a
that's so I think in the previous question you alluded to this, right? So we know VCs, they obviously get enamored by the bigger trends that are happening. So Web3 was a big trend, right? Great technology, but I think with Web3 things were a little bit too early. And like I said, unless you can take a technology and transform it into business value or a large amount of value, it remains a good technology and may not, So I think Web3's time will come at some point, but it's not now. GenAI seems to be a little bit more grounded, but it is right now a big fad. And so we did see a lot of investment happening in the GenAI space in the last few months. some of it was like people are raising money on PowerPoints, which is a sign that.
Are you kidding?
Yes, it
People
does
are
happen.
raising money on PowerPoints.
Yes,
This used to happen in the 80s and 90s. What's going on?
Yeah, it's a new sort of wave, right? Which most investors also want to ride, and so does entrepreneurs, right? Everybody is now trying to do a GenAI startup without really thinking deeply about what value they are creating. So this is where I think the good investors and good entrepreneurs will stick to the fundamentals, right? Which is, am I building something of value? Does it have a large market, right? And is it differentiated enough from what is already out there?
Right.
There may be competition, which is totally fine. Maybe there are 10 people or 20 people or 50 people building the same product, but you still have a chance because you are in the race at the same time. But if you're not thinking of those fundamental things, both as an entrepreneur and an investor, then eventually things will fade out. And my guess is that by the end of this year, this fad will sort of settle down. But then the valuable technologies and businesses that have been born in this time, and the investors who have looked at the right sort of discipline will thrive after this, because this is a real technology that has made a huge difference. And I have some real examples that I have been able to.
Can you share some?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is very, very personal, right? My previous startup, Citizen, which was a healthcare data platform, we had to build a document processing pipeline which takes your medical reports, your lab reports, your clinical documents, and we had to build a pipeline that could read and understand those documents.
Wow.
And these are all unstructured documents, right? So we use NLP, computer vision, the previous generation of these GenAI techniques.
Did you got acquired?
We did get acquired, yes, yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. So we built that technology using the previous generation of these, transformer models and some of the NLP models that we use. And it took us almost 1.5 to 2 years to build that whole pipeline. And now with Weav AI, we have now customers who are using a similar document processing engine that we have built. And it took us like 3 months to develop the first version of that engine using generative AI technologies. So it's a huge productivity improvement for a lot of the use cases that used to take a lot of time. It is not a solution for every use case, but a lot of use cases. And you can see several examples. One example I like to take is Adobe Photoshop, right? It's a great tool, has been a leader in creative space for a long time. It's a very difficult tool to learn and master,
yes.
and even creative professionals have
yes.
to get trained.
Yes.
And now they have built this conversational interface on the tool where you can just tell the tool what to do, as opposed to going and clicking menus and setting configurations and so on. So imagine how a creative professional's productivity is going to significantly improve. So there are some real valuable technologies that are coming in, and I think people who can harness those use cases and build solutions around that will thrive with this technology.
So this is amazing. Like, I'm already getting goosebumps here because I've struggled so much with Adobe, and I know I run a business out of that. I have a marketing agency. I know what it can do. Like, you're paying so many people extra to do those laborious work, and you're saying the bot is going to make it easier. That's amazing. There's a example I heard at the Bloomberg Technology Conference, which happened yesterday, and the CEO of Discord, he said that he's building like a chat bot where kids are discussing. They have a thread of discussion on Discord, but they're on another platform, let's say like a Roblox, or like there are a couple of others they hang out in, where they're building stuff, they're playing games like Twitch or something, and there is a bot which reads all this interaction, and it's generating code for them if they talk about building something. Like, for example, in Minecraft, I've seen my daughter do it. It's so hard to build those homes because it's like an engineering architectural thing, and this bot is going to help build a script for that. What do you think? Where do you think this is headed? Should we say stop here, or because this is like a hangout where kids have fun, and you're able to give them tools to build something when they're having fun? So what are the ethical issues related to
GenAI? I think it's not just GenAI. Any technology has to be looked at with two lenses, right? What it enables and what pitfalls it can have, what risks it comes with. If you think about it, YouTube as an example, which we all obviously use a lot. when it came out, there was the same type of question: will YouTube be used for learning things, or can it be used for distraction? And today it's a bit of both, right?
Yep,
But it is a huge learning platform. I mean, I'm amazed that you can
Yes.
find all answers on YouTube.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
so I think any technology, including this generative AI, will become, it depends on how you use it.
Yep.
What it will do is it will reduce the barrier to achieve some results. Like, for example, for these kids, earlier these kids on Roblox maybe had to learn how to program, using the language, or Minecraft, using the language that platform provides. Now they can think of the logic and speak it in a logical way, and it can generate the code. And so it's much faster to develop those kind of things.
Yep.
And so I think that will unleash a whole lot of creativity to the surface, because even kids who are not interested in programming will get interested in doing things. And it's a similar thing for other things, right? So you can now build enterprise applications where product managers can go and start building some things, because now it doesn't.
Cool. Yeah, that's very cool.
Right?
I've always I've always seen people in corporations struggle with some new idea they have, but they don't have the freedom to build and execute and test.
I mean, it's a barrier, right? Learning programming is a barrier because it's a technical skill which not everybody is interested in or can learn. So I think it's the primary use of short term of generative AI is going to be creating a lot more enablement for people. So two things. One is it will enable a lot more people to do things with technology. And second thing is it will significantly improve the productivity and efficiency of people who are already using technology. And that's going to, when you do that, a lot of great things are created. Some bad things will also be created. And I mean, those things, the regulatory bodies will have to figure out, what to allow and what to not allow. But I think in general it will be good for humankind, because when you unleash creativity, good things happen.
The tech stack, it's called the preliminary generative AI tech stack. I want to ask, they have end-to-end applications, closed source foundation models, model hubs, apps. There is cloud platforms and compute hardware. Where are the startups happening in this particular stack? Where are the sweet spot for a GenAI founder to build a startup?
Right. I think it's in all those stacks, right? It's all those stacks, including I know a few startups that are actually looking to build new generation of GPUs and CPUs. I mean, they're not calling them GPUs, but this is new type of computing, and it may require a new architecture even at the hardware level, at the compute level. Right? So it's happening across the stack. Of course, people who can build a new CPU or GPU equivalent need to be like really deep, computer science and research type of people, and there are fewer of those in the world. So I think people who are really, really deep into that domain will be able to build some of that, hopefully. But if you go up the stack, right, the fundamental building blocks of generative AI, which is the foundation models, the vector databases, the fine-tuning engines, the prompt management, security, all these will have startups coming out, in all these areas. And then, of course, finally the applications, right? The applications and solutions. So I think there's an opportunity in all these things. The application stack is what generates the value, but applications cannot be developed if the other components are not there, right? So I think there's an opportunity for startups in all these areas. And you can see from the chart that you have that there are startups in all these areas that are still early stages. So some of them will succeed, some of them will maybe pivot or die, right? But this ecosystem is developing right now. It's still very early. It's like I said, it's easy to build an application for demo, but for actual real business value, I think we're still in early days. So I think that's what's going to happen in the next few years.
So my question is, will this tech stack change as generative AI becomes commoditized? Is this stack going to look different?
So it will evolve, right? I don't think it will change. There are some fundamental things that are needed, but for example, you may have what I foresee is there'll be building foundation models which are fine-tuned towards a business will become more commonplace. So there'll be frameworks and tools and platforms that will allow you to quickly develop your own foundation model. Using an open source one, Weav AI would be one of those platforms. Then there'll be, one sort of big thing about generative AI is the prompt, which is which I call it's a new API. It's the API for the AI that is going to come in future. And because that is unstructured, it's going to be a lot more difficult to monitor and manage and look at ethical inputs and outputs, secure inputs and outputs using a language type of interface.
The Discord, the Midjourney has 13 million users, subscribers. Oh my God, 13 million.
Yeah.
I don't know how many users Facebook has, but Midjourney could very well beat Facebook shortly. Midjourney. Who is monitoring those prompts, right?
Yeah, I mean, so that will be one of the areas that is going to become very crucial.
Is
to
that
be able
fall
to.
under security, or is it compliance, or what is that?
It's all of that. So it's governance, security, compliance, right? You want to make sure that the questions being asked of the models are not out of line based on what you're doing for the business, and the answers that the model gives are also have to be monitored. So you have to monitor it both ways, and so that's going to be a big area because it's early days and prompts are language. So it's very difficult to monitor language, right? Few words here and there can make a difference. So that's a big area. Vector databases are there. The first few commercial ones are available now. There'll be more, I think, in the coming years. It will become easier to sort of store data, store content. So I think there's going to be innovation across. So this stack will evolve. There'll be some new components that will come, but fundamentally, it's going to remain. The building blocks are going to be sort of what they are today.
Yeah. So the day where you did the panel, Perplexity AI was talked about a lot. Looks like it's a post Series A startup, or is it Series B?
Which one?
Perplexity AI. It's a search engine, and
Yes.
then like Google, but it's far more conversational.
Yes.
So what is a startup like that valued at?
So valuation, it depends on where the market is also, right? I mean, like I said, VCs. I've heard a company that is doing a foundation model out of Europe, ex-Google guys. They on a PowerPoint they raised $100 million for.
Oh my
I think.
God!
I don't know.
Is that like seed or Series A?
It's actually pre-seed. Right?
What?
So
100 million pre-seed for a GenAI startup?
Yeah. So it's all. So valuations are very contextual around what time you're raising, right?
Shall I ask you one question very frankly?
Mm-hmm.
If I have a .ai in my startup's name, is the startup valuation going to be higher?
So everybody has a .ai in the startup name now.
Yes, there's a .io I thought was cool, but .ai looks like
Yeah. So it was .com, then it became .io, then now it's .ai. I mean, every startup has a .ai, and I think we joke that because the .coms and the .io have sort of got exhausted, so everybody's getting .ai, whether they are an AI startup or not. I mean, it's a hot area right now for sure. But like I said, right, if you're not solving a fundamental problem, creating value, right, and it's a large enough problem, then eventually you can get whatever valuations you can get now. But will you be able to live up to it and sustain? Those are the questions that you have to think about. Valuations are very instantaneous, right?
Correct.
So right now you can get a high valuation, but in a year from now, when things become sane, you will be struggling to live up to that valuation, right? And so that's a lot. I would say that's a worse position to be in than being valued low now and then really building something fundamentally valuable and getting high valuations later.
Fantastic. Really great insights from you. There's one question I want to ask so that people who are building GenAI startups, they can learn from you. What are the top 3 hygiene practices for any GenAI startup founder? For example, a few years ago when I asked this question for people who did AI startups, they said, make sure you have high quality data, make sure that you're using the right rules to train, and you've thought through, you've done some second order thinking when you're training. There shouldn't be a garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. So like that, what are some of the hygiene practices to build really good products in GenAI?
Yeah, so I think fundamentally GenAI is also AI. So some of pretty much all of those practices that they still apply, but there are a couple of new ones, right? So in GenAI, you are largely dealing with unstructured data, right? I mean, yes, there are applications with structured data as well, but a large amount of applications will be using images and text and so on, or videos and audio. So yes, data is always, what data you use to train and fine tune is going to make a huge difference, because these models learn with data. We humans, we learn with data. So it's very much dependent on data. The other change that I feel is the prompts, right, which is your API. So earlier the API used to be a structured thing where you have a very fixed contract with the API, but computational APIs have a very fixed contract. You can build your rules there, what is to be allowed, what is to be not allowed. And this comes back to the generative AI APIs, which are the prompts, which are language. And I think the hygiene that you need to maintain in both input and output, and monitoring that, curating that, and making sure that you have the ability to sort of put the guardrails around that, detect if something wrong is going on. That's going to be extremely, extremely important. You can have the best model, you can have the best data, but if that is not controlled, then it can go out of control, because these are the way these models are trained. They by nature they can hallucinate. They can produce stuff that is non-factual. They can produce anything. Right?
The do anything now prompt, which could break the ChatGPT. It was a jailbreak.
Yes.
It was scary.
It is scary, and that's where enterprise platforms and platforms that allow you to develop applications need to fundamentally build those guardrails. Without which this can, it could create results that are either harmful or not useful, which is, not good.
Awesome. So such a fantastic conversation with Peeyush Rai here. You're definitely a genuine entrepreneur, and I can see that you're going to build whatever you're going to build. You're going to build a high quality, high business value product. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation on GenAI. You're going to light up a lot of inspiration on many entrepreneurs. With that, is there any parting advice you have for entrepreneurs in general who are listening to this?
Absolutely. Thanks. I enjoyed the conversation, and you asked some really great questions, fundamental questions. The advice for entrepreneurs is, to me, is always no different than any other time or now, right? You have to look at some very basic things. Firstly, you have to be passionate about the problem you're solving and relate to the problem you're solving, right? So that's what gives rise to the desire to build something. And so you have to have that conviction that you really want to solve this problem, and you're passionate about it, and you can spend next few years, 5 years, 10 years solving that problem. Because it's, if you don't have that conviction and passion, then you will not be able to build a valuable company out of it. So that's the fundamental thing. The second thing I would say is, which most investors look for is the problem big enough? It doesn't have to be that you have to raise money via investors. There are many other startups that have started small, bootstrapped, and then grown later on, and that's absolutely a viable method. It depends on the situation on which you are in. If you get early customers who are ready to pay you money, then that's the best way to grow, without giving up equity of the company. So, but it may not be applicable to every startup, because sometimes you do require hiring engineers and building something, and you yourself may not have that kind of money. The other factor is investors also, beyond money, they also bring additional value, which is the discipline to think around how to build a company.
So important.
I think that's very important, because if you're just building something on your own, you will keep going thinking you're doing the right things, but there's no checks and balances. So I would say more than the money, the investors bring that discipline of forcing you to think whether you're doing something valuable, whether you need to change your thinking or adapt your thinking to something. So that's the second thing, is solving a big enough problem, right? And the third thing is, of course, are you building something that is creating something, valuable for your customer, right? You may have a great idea, and you may have a very much a big passion around what you're building. But if you can't provide that value to the customer, then all that is going to remain a cool technology, which is what we talked about. And lastly, right, if you, there is no good reason for you to become an entrepreneur. There are so many risks. If you take 100 reasons, there'll be 2 reasons for you to pursue that path and 98 reasons for you to not do it.
Yeah.
And so you have to be passionate enough to hang on to those two reasons and go forward. And that's how entrepreneurs think. They don't care about the 98 reasons that tell them not to do this, right?
Right.
So you have to have that a little bit of that's why entrepreneurs are outliers. They are not the normal thinkers, logical
And they
thinkers.
change the world because they are like that.
Yes, some of them change the world, of course, and I think without that we would not be having the benefit of so much great technology and culture and art and everything. I mean, it's all contribution to the society. So yeah, I would say if you're passionate about it, go for it. And there is no right or wrong time. I would say it's great to start a company when the market is low, because then you are disciplined from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And it's easy to raise money in a hot market, but then when the market cools off, then you struggle sometimes. So it's always good to start a company when the market is low, and you have to struggle to get your first VC investment or struggle to get your first customer. But if you get past those points, then you really have a path, building something valuable.
Oh my God, I'm totally speechless. We just had a mini MBA course in the last 5 to 7 minutes. This is the most valuable segment you will get from any entrepreneur in any field. Peeyush, that was mind blowing. You talked about passion, you talked about going after the right market, discipline for yourself and the VCs that they bring in, and you talked about why entrepreneurs are outliers, but still in the low market, how with disciplined thinking they can make it big. Such an amazing insight. Thank you so much, Peeyush, for those parting note. And we'd love to have you back. I have lots of questions on business models for GenAI. We hardly scratched the surface.
Sure.
Please come on board again at Pitch Cafe and please share your valuable insights. I think you would have matured as a company. When you come next time, we'd love to have you back again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome.